since I have been teaching since 1973, one way I started thinking about the 60s was about social work education and what was then that isn't now. There were scholarships. Almost everybody was on scholarships. It was a time before agencies were bought and sold. It was a time where there was still raising the question even about how long social workers should be supervised. That happened to be a theme that was on campus at the time, about how long social workers should be supervised and when would it ever be over. Should you be supervised forever? And I can remember social workers should always be supervised as opposed to the issues around private practice. And then I can come to the 60s. My deans were Parad, Pincus was here, Esther Clements was here. There was no question about the psychodynamic orientation. And I felt that there was a real continuity with previous classes. I mean, they had at that point in the casework courses, there was in the first year, there was this book of cases that they had used forever. When people would come back to campus for affairs, people would still talk about the cases in the book. So you felt a continuity with previous classes for at least a decade or better because the cases were that old. So there was this sense that you had continuity with previous classes at that point. But there were no choices in the curriculum. No. And I think that was mentioned, and there was still then no electives. And I was 64 to 66. But first and foremost, I guess, about the 60s, the race relations. I mean, we had the assassinations of Kennedy and King, and then Kennedy, Bob Kennedy again. And so I thought that maybe I would take a few minutes to sort of emphasize some thoughts about the racial climate here at that time. From my vantage point in coming, I should sort of say this was my third educational experience, and that my most intensely racist experience had been high school. I feel that there is nothing like the sorting process that takes place at 10th, 11th, and 12th grade for black youngsters in terms of getting them tracked into not going into college. And to make that blatant, I had to avoid, I was in a white school, my parents were from rural Mississippi, and I had to avoid my guidance counselor who wanted to get me out of an academic program. Even though I graduated in 3.3 at CUNY, he said this was a mistake, I should come back, he was going to do paperwork, and that I should be following detentions around this. So, because I didn't go to see him, it was easier just not to go see him and take the detentions. So that was high school. And I was in a very supportive church-affiliated religious college. And then I was coming into Smith. And I thought, so I come thinking, well, I don't know. I know educational institutions can be a problem here, Lisa. And I get here, and I felt that the atmosphere was really one of being colorblind. Now, for me, since I had the experience of such an overt racist situation, to be colorblind was okay with me. It's not really sensitive, but it's not, actively hostile and attacking kind of situation. And I just thought two things, just to sort of bring home what I mean about that. One was around placements, to be a black, there were only 4 blacks in the class. There were only 2 of us that went to New York. I didn't like the other person, when you that went to New York, and I thought it would be deadly to be with her, so we never hooked up for housing. There was this sense that if you were a little concerned about how you were going to go into New York, convince people you were from Smith and that you needed an apartment just for 9 months, and that you were having some trouble with this, it might be resistance and anxiety around learning, rather than anything racial might be involved with the housing situation in New York. This was not raised as a consideration about what the combination of factors. The other one was the second year I was in the Bronx office JBG, and early in the 60s there was an issue that people did not want to seem like they were racist, so I got a white caseload first, even though I was in South Bronx, we were in South Bronx. So, I mean, there was a really diverse, I was in an agency with diverse clients, but I basically got first a Riverdale caseload, actually. So it was actually upper. And I was actually even assigned a case of a youngster with tic Gilles de la Tourette, which is a tic disorder in which at that time in the American Handbook, when we were trying to research this thing, there was 100 or so many odd cases, and in every language the echolalia, and the kid says words that they can't, inaudible words. It's a rare disorder where they say shit and fuck you. So by the time I went to make the school visit in Riverdale, for this youngster, had a youngster who was saying, "Fuck you, Miss Hall," to Riverdale. News of this rare disorder from the Bronx office. And we never discussed race. It was never discussed as a part of what I might have to navigate to get in and out of that situation. And having said this, I also want to say that I feel I had a wonderful education, and that I emerged with the sense that I felt some others who felt that racism, race and ethnicity was more at the forefront. That somehow what it led to, I frequently felt, in terms of subsequent, not classes necessarily from here, because I've been in New York and Boston, but people would emerge with this notion that you needed different theories for different people. And one of the things about having to treat from the South Bronx to Riverdale, eventually I did get some, I had to advocate for them, but I eventually did get some minority clients, was that we were using the same theory all the time, and that if a theory explains human development, then if it can't explain a person in the South Bronx, then it really doesn't explain a person in Riverdale either. And there was a conviction about that, actually, at the time. It has informed my practice. I feel I've been very helpful to people treating from that vantage point. So I do think it makes a difference, you know, in terms of where you are in a time, because this was before there was a minority council group here. This was before there was women's group, gay group. This was before all of the 66. There were no power groups on campus. You know, we were all just still doing the same curriculum, cases, etc., etc. And in the process of that, I feel that there were some things that I really gained out of that experience, although it was nice to feel that people were attending more, but it was a whole side of me that I felt Smith in no way related to. And a lot of people may feel that about different aspects of themselves, but this is just to make clear the kinds of things that I had to navigate.